Hello! Welcome to 8-Bit Rocket Retro Game Inspiration Podcast number 1. This edition, the first edition, is going to be on a game called Food Fight for the Atari 7800. Food Fight, which you should be seeing on the screen very soon, is being played and recorded in the MES emulator, which I used Replay Screencast to capture. And I would have used my actual Atari 7800, but I could not get screen capture to work on it. Trying to figure out some ways to do it, I decided it'd be best to use Replay Screencast. The problem with that is no sound. There's some great sound in this game, though. Some very good music and some great sound. Probably the Atari 7800 cartridge with the best overall sound, gameplay, almost arcade perfect visuals. Obviously, it's not exactly like the arcade game. On the arcade game, which is a game created by GCC Corporation in 1983, GCC Corporation, interesting story. They were some college kids, engineering hackers, and they decided they wanted to hack together some new boards for their Tempest, a missile command machine that they had. Atari wasn't too happy with them, tried to take them to court. Turned out Atari figured out these guys were fantastic. Let's hire them as engineers, and they designed a lot of hardware and games for the Atari, specifically the 7800. 9 launch titles for the 7800, Miss Pac-Man, and others, and other hardware and software. And Atari really needed them because most of the engineers had left to form companies such as Amiga. A lot of it left and went to Commodore. A lot they went to a Magic and Activision and other companies. And so Atari, needing a breath of fresh air game-wise, hired GCC, and this is what they got. Now, Food Fight. It's a great, very interesting game. This is one of my favorite parts of it right here, is the watermelon levels, when you basically get to have an auto fire when you go on top of watermelon. Very similar to the set pieces that you'll find in a Medal of Honor game or one of the new 3D shooters where you get to sit there and blow away enemy that come right at you from a stationary gun that's set up. In Food Fight, you run from the right-hand side of the screen to the left, dodging the chefs and throwing food at them. Not quite sure why the chefs are throwing food at you. I think maybe because you want the ice cream cone over on the left-hand side of the screen and they want you to eat their food they've cooked, but not quite sure if they cooked these bananas. In any case, I want to make a game like it called Lunch Battle, where you're a kid trying to get out of the cafeteria without having food thrown at you by the bullies. You'll start on the right-hand side and you'll run to the left and implement something just like this. Instant replay happens if you do really good on a level, and I don't know if this game was set up to have random instant replay or not, but it seems to only happen if I do really well on this banana level. In the arcade, it seemed to happen on some other levels too. Maybe I just only in the intermediate one you don't get it. I played the intermediate. You don't get it unless you do well in the banana level. In any case, very, very fun game. Not a lot of people played it. About, I would say, 1,000,000 were sold. Maybe another 250,000 have been uncovered since the end of the 90s, or for various distributors had them. They weren't sold. But let's say about 1 million people might have had a copy of this game. And why is there only 1 million people? When there's 70 to 100 million NESs out there. Well, let's go back to 1984. Atari had just put out Atari 5200, which was not a complete failure. They sold a lot of them, but realistically, it was an Atari 800, which was a great computer with really crappy joysticks. That's pretty much all it was. And the ColecoVision had better joysticks and a better selection of games. The 5200 just wasn't supported well enough. So, where does GCC fit in here? Well, GCC had started making a splash by making Miss Pac-Man, by winning the lawsuit with Atari, becoming some Atari engineers. And GCC said, hey, look, we know how to make video game consoles. We think we can do better than the 5200. So GCC designed and created the Atari 7800. If it had come out in 1984, it would have been a giant hit, supposedly. It actually did get released in limited quantities right before Jack Tramiel bought Atari. And Jack Tramiel decided, hey, I don't want anything to do with video games. I have these great 16, 32-bit computers. I have an Amiga that's going to come out, which he lost out to Commodore and came out with the Atari ST, which was a great computer in its own right. Obviously not as fantastic as the Amiga, but you can't forget that the ST, for a while there, was one of the most popular computers in the world. Thousands of games, thousands of great games. It's just, he lost out to Nintendo with the 700, lost out to Commodore with the Amiga. Not necessarily all his fault, but let's not delve into that right now. But in 1986, he decided, hey, look, I'm not making huge amounts of money with my computer yet. Europe hasn't caught on, which would happen later, making him hundreds of millions of dollars a year for a few years there. So let's put out some video games. So one of the two video game systems he put out right about 1986, or planning on it, was 7800. Take all that inventory we have, put it out. Let's not support it. It did pretty well. Started selling pretty well. Could not beat Nintendo. Couldn't beat Sega, although it held its own with the Master System, another system I owned. But it just didn't have enough good titles. Not a good enough software. I mean, the software they did have was like in a battle with a pea shooter against Nintendo, who had nuclear weapons. I mean, Nintendo had so many good pieces of software. And then another system that he had bought out at that time was the XE game system, which basically was an Atari XE computer compatible with the Atari 800, which also had a version of Food Fight. Pretty good version, not as many colors on the screen. But here's the watermelon level again. So I want to make Lunch Battle. I'm going to start designing an engine to play this game, a reskinnable engine for sale, but I'm going to take the engine, create a Food Fight style game, and I'm going to need a pixel artist. So anyone who might be interested in doing some pixel graphics for this, let me know. You can email me at info@8bitrocket.com. Also, I have some people in mind. They're not always available, so I'm always looking for good new artists to work on things. Anyway, that's it for the first edition of the 8-Bit Rocket Retro Game Inspirations, and we're going to have more soon. This is how we're going to start building some game engines based on some retro game inspirations, because of the games I like. And I'm always going to need a pixel artist to make turn these games into licensable titles. So, if you're interested, like I said, email info@8bitrocket.com. Until next time, thanks for listening and watching, and you should go try out Food Fight either with the MES emulator. Go buy one off eBay. You can even try Food Fight on the Atari 800 emulators. It's a great game. You'll love it. Too bad you can't hear the music because it's fantastic. Until next time.